Hey, you know what's shocking? Electricity! And also the entire Danganronpa series. Shock value is a precarious tool because when it's done right, it's amazing, but when it's done wrong, it's really, really bad. Obligatory spoiler warning for the 3 main Danganronpa games. So when it comes to using shock as a literary device, there's shocking good and there's shocking bad. Shocking good exists for a reason. Maybe it's something noble, maybe it's for humor, maybe it's forwarding the story or making you understand a character at a deeper level. Good shock has an aftershock. Shocking bad, on the other hand, is kind of hard to define. I was kind of inclined to say shocking bad is something that shocks you just for the sake of shocking you, but that's not necessarily true. I suppose you could say shocking bad is something that will grab your attention like crazy, but it doesn't contribute anything real or meaningful or important to the quality of the story or gameplay or whatever. The reason I don't like shock for the sake of shock is because it's lazy, okay? Like horror games that rely purely on jump scares to scare you and skip out on making a good atmosphere, lazy. Stories that bring in or bring back a character in a way that completely contradicts the preset rules of that world, lazy. And rage bait, lazy. It will evoke something in you, but there's no meat and potatoes to it. Okay, once the initial shock wears off, there's just nothing. If we're talking about shocking bad, you might be expecting me to bring up Korekiyo's incest plotline. Wrong. You know, if I had €1 for every time there was a major incest moment in V3 specifically, I'd have €2, which isn't a lot. But it is very weird that it happened twice. Obviously, I'm talking about Korekiyo and his sister, and also Monotaro and Monafani's thing. These pairs are literally the perfect way to compare shocking good and shocking bad in Danganronpa. I think Korekiyo's incest plotline was shocking great, okay, because it was very much a what the fuck is on my screen right now moment when I saw it for the first time. I was super grossed out because, you know, incest. But this shock moment has some serious payoff. It's a vehicle for Korekiyo's story, which is somewhat up for interpretation in terms of power dynamics, but I and a lot of other people interpret it as Korekiyo was groomed by his older sister, both into an incestuous relationship and also into following her life's passion of anthropology instead of finding his own. And like, maybe he would have loved anthropology anyway, but it's pretty undeniable that his sister's influence like definitely played a part here. So first, the shock of Korekiyo's breakdown and the whole incest reveal makes you feel something really strongly. For me, it was a combo of disgust, confusion, and a whole lot of shock. But it's not shock content for the sake of shocking, it's shock that's used to confront you about a pretty disturbing story about a kid who was a victim and then a victim who became a monster. And it reframes everything we thought we knew about Korekiyo. The game doesn't give you a justification for his crap, but it does give you something. And regardless of whether or not you think it's handled well is a whole nother story. I know that it's pretty controversial, but you for sure cannot deny that the shock had a purpose. There's a reward for digging into this plotline because regardless of whether or not you like him as a character, he's an interesting guy. The timing here is also notable because this wouldn't have been anywhere near as shocking if his intro scene was,
"My name is Korekiyo Shinguchi. I am called the ultimate anthropologist.
Also, I shagged my sister." Danganronpa knows how to do a killer breakdown. Nah, get it? Because he's a killer. And the discovery in this trial is just so much more impactful than it would have been if it was done at literally any other time in the game. But Monotaro and Monafani? What the fuck was this? What did this accomplish? Other than being gross. Did it up the emotional stakes? Did it change the way that the story plays out? Did it reveal some complex story and motivation? No to all of the above. Was it supposed to be funny? I don't know. Maybe. But it really just feels more disgusting and there's no meat and potatoes. It's just some pan-fried siblings being way too close. There's no development, no foreshadowing, no meaningful addition to a story, no emotional arc, whatever. It's just a grotesque contrast to Korekiyo's story. To be fair, Danganronpa is pretty ridiculous sometimes, and I love it for that, so maybe this was shock value for the sake of entertainment, and the point is just, like, look at these little freaks. Even if you do find a relationship funny, like, you have the right to think so, but that did not belong in Goento's execution. Danganronpa's executions might be ridiculous, but they are not funny. Except for maybe, like, Mondo Butter. Okay, they're usually not funny. They're emotional, and they're bleak, and they're despair-inducing, and now this crap has been shoved in and undercut what I would argue is one of the most emotional executions without giving anything meaningful in return. I was already devastated that Gunther was getting executed, and now you go and throw this incest birth in the middle of it? The only good thing about this relationship was when they died. And then they came back anyway, so I guess I'll go fuck myself. Thank God I'm an only child, Smoogie can't go write some bullshit into my life. I feel like I can't really talk about shock in Danganronpa without giving a mention to Nagito's body discovery. Like, there's been some brutal deaths, but Nagito's was the only one where I genuinely recoiled from my screen a little. At first I was like, oh, what the hell is in front of my eyeballs? Like, this is so incredibly shocking, but the game does something with the shock. Like, every gruesome part about this discovery, every injury, every blood splatter, even the fact that he's screaming through the tape comes back up in the trial. Like, yes, this is going to get a reaction out of you, but none of it is there just to get a reaction out of you. Like, it is relevant to the actual case. Once that initial shock wears off, if it does wear off, because man, this was brutal, but if/when it does, there's a lot there to chew on. Nagito's death moves the story by setting up the reveal of the remnants of despair and adds even more to the character of Nagito, because we knew he was insane, but this is a whole other level. You know, the thing I would love to see the most in 2x2 is a redo on Mikan's execution. Alright, listen, you can kill off Hajime, Nagito, and Chiaki in the first chapter. You can have a protagonist switch to Teru, and we play as Teru for the whole game. I'd be okay with that if it meant that Mikan got a better execution. I can see the vision behind, maybe wanting this scene to be as uncomfortable as possible given the topic. If that is the case, then it was executed very well, because oh my good golly gosh, was this uncomfortable to watch. So uncomfortable. There's a reason why this is really widely regarded as one of the worst executions in this series. So I guess it's effective shock, but I don't think it's good, and I don't think this shock served a purpose, at least not one that couldn't have been done better another way, other than just provoking a reaction and leaving it at that. We don't even see Mikan die at the end of this. Off the top of my head, this is the only time we don't see the blackened die in their execution. Mikan has a very tragic backstory of sexual abuse, and this execution is very clearly sexually abusive. So I can imagine that's bringing a lot of despair, but it's also so blatantly meant to be appealing to a subset of fans in a way that I really, really don't like. There are plenty of ways that you could incorporate her past trauma and despair without going into Gunnar-bait territory. Like, off the top of my head, you could have a sea of men consume her, and then there's a shot where some of her clothes are being thrown up into the air, and that carries an implication of the assault that would have been happening to her in this hypothetical scene. And that's incredibly disturbing and incredibly uncomfortable, and does call back to her traumatic past, but it doesn't sexualize her in the same way that the execution that we have did. That's just one example. I've seen so many incredible fan concepts for a Mikan execution, but we did not get anything like that. Instead, we just got this. And yes, it did provoke a reaction, but the reaction was mostly just ugh. No major emotional moment, no huge, gut-wrenching impact. Just ugh. So, I've talked a fair bit about my opinions on some specific uses of shock in Danganronpa so far, but there's a glaring problem that I alluded to earlier, and that is the matter of subjectivity. Danganronpa has quite a bit of fan service, right? And for me, it exists in a grey area of being shocking good and shocking bad. One of the first things I thought about when thinking about shocking bad things was actually Miu and all her fan service. I had this mostly scripted, and then I saw Plushroom Kingdom uploaded a video ranking all of the love suite scenes from V3, so obviously I had to stop everything I was doing. I hadn't actually played any of them before, so I went and watched some of them on YouTube, and oh my. I mean, these have got to be like the definitive example of being shocking good and being shocking bad. They are definitely shocking, but in a lot of ways they're a window into the deepest parts of these characters. Like, we see Karumi's inferiority complex and how Maki just wants someone to love in a way that we don't really see in the rest of the game. But some of them, I'm traumatized. This cast is full of freaks, and I think a concerning amount of them don't know what consent is. Like, going off my previous definitions, this would be shocking good because it did serve a major narrative purpose. but like it was so uncomfortable to me. I'm not entirely convinced it was worth it. And this is where I find another issue with my whole definitions of shocking good and shocking bad. I think I might have implied at points that something being shocking good means it's narratively good, or it's good for humor purposes, or it's entertaining, or just like it's generally good. And that is simply just not the case. Like I was just talking about the love suite scenes, and I think they're shocking good because they do serve a good narrative purpose. But are they good? That's really up for interpretation. And then Mikan's execution, which I was also just talking about, I know it's not really the bravest take in the world to say that I didn't like it, but there are people who like it, and like not in a gooner bait way. Maybe you there even disagree with me on whether or not it's gooner bait in the first place. And you'd have every right to that opinion and that interpretation, even if you do like it because you think it's gooner bait. You have every right to that opinion. Just because I'm the one talking into the camera doesn't mean I'm like objectively correct or anything. Except for when it does. I do stand by my stance that I don't like shock content for the sake of shocking, but the problem is because it is so subjective that unless the creator comes out and says, hey, this was shock for the sake of shock, nobody can definitively say if it is or not. And with all that, the ultimate example of grey area shock value is the ending to V3. Okay, we all know that V3's ending is pretty controversial. Depending on your interpretation, you might be coming to the realization that nothing in this game, possibly the whole entire series, was real. And that's undeniably very shocking. But how you take the ending of V3 is honestly very, very personal. I think that it was shocking good. Regardless of whether or not you liked the ending, it was not shock for the sake of getting a reaction out of you and then doing nothing with that. What it does do is it makes you rethink everything, like literally everything about the series thus far. It's a challenge to the audience to reconsider the series that you've adored, and there's plenty of valid interpretations, good and bad. But it does kind of return to that question I had earlier. Just because something is shocking good, does that mean it is good? It's undeniable that the V3 ending is shocking, complex, and thought-provoking. But I know a lot of you guys really don't like it, and understandably so. At first, to be honest, I didn't like the ending, but I've kind of changed my mind. But if we're being real, my opinion on the ending doesn't actually matter here, because the point is, this ending has an aftershock. It is shocking, but for a lot of players, it still missed the mark on being a good ending. Another problem with shock value, even shocking good, is that if everything's shocking, nothing is shocking. The double murder in the first game was pretty shocking, and in the second game, it was also, a bit shocking, but then by the time we got to the third game, I think we all saw that one coming, especially with Tenko's whole, we can do this guy's speech. We all knew there was going to be a double murder in the third chapter of the third game. Remember when I mentioned horror games and jump scares at the start? A game that relies on jump scares to scare you, it becomes predictable. A game that relies on shock value all the time becomes predictable and unremarkable. I know we're talking about Danganronpa, but I actually don't think Danganronpa falls into this pitfall too much. Obviously there is the example of we all knew the double murder was coming in the third game, but for the most part I feel like Danganronpa has been quite unpredictable. That's actually one of the things I really love about this series. I have found it hard to predict most twists and most things that would happen. If there is a double murder in 2x2, I hope it's not in the third chapter. I think if it's in the first chapter, that would really, really throw everything off. And that'd also be a really good, path splitting thing for the other scenario. I don't think this concern applies to Danganronpa too much, but it does apply to the concept of shock value being used in media in general. When it comes down to it, I think what makes something shocking good instead of shocking bad is, does it leave me with something more than a just what the fuck? What happens afterwards? Does it make me think a little bit more? Does it make me understand a character differently? Does it push the narrative forward? Is it funny? Or does it stop at evoking an emotion that sounds kind of ugh? And then even if it is shocking good, that doesn't mean the full moment is going to be good. A given moment could really make me think, and it might just still be kind of crap. But when it's good, it's really good. Special mentions to Sakura's sacrifice, Tugami's appearance for the first time, and the V3 protagonist change. Those are all incredible. I just didn't have the time to go into DL for any of them. Okay, well I think I've talked for long enough, so your turn. What, are you seriously gonna let me do all the work? Come on! I wanna hear your thoughts. How much do you agree or disagree with me? Maybe you agree with my, thesis that shock for the sake of shock is bad, but you might disagree with me on what I find shocking. Or maybe you think I've just been talking out of my arse the entire time. It's a very valid range of opinions, but either way, I would love to hear it. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna go play some solitaire.